All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are live on Women Who Lift Israel with our special guest, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Hi,
Hi,
Dr.
I'm so happy
Gabrielle.
to be here. Hi, happy to be here.
So, to intro everyone to our group, my name is Sarah, and I'm the founder of our beautiful and strong community. We are a women only Facebook and Instagram community focused on empowering women through strength training. And every week, we interview athletes and medical professionals in the field in order to give our members inspiration, motivation, advice, and tips from professionals like Dr. Lyon. So, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Lyon.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Amazing. So, for those who do not know Dr. Lyon, Dr. Lyon is a badass, fearless doctor who has dedicated her entire career to educating her patients and followers on the benefits of muscle and clearing
Mhm.
misconceptions around protein, with the ultimate goal of lifelong vitality. So she uses evidence based science to educate the world on how to restore metabolism, balance hormones, and optimize body composition in order to live a healthy, long life. And
Yes.
honestly, everything she touches is so full of passion and integrity that you get hooked on Dr. Lyon pretty quickly. And
Yeah,
she does all of this while juggling a private clinical practice and being a mom of two kids under three, right? Under three?
yeah, yeah, under 2.5.
Wow,
Very little.
amazing. So, Dr. Lyon, I'm extremely honored and excited to have you with us today. And before we start the interview, I wanted to let you on a little secret.
I love
Okay,
secrets.
so what's my secret? So, actually founded Women Who Lift Israel March 2020 when we started the pandemic,
Hmm.
and the gyms were closed. Everyone was locked in their houses and everything. And I already was like a CrossFit addict, and I wanted to create, recreate this community feeling online through Women Who Lift Israel. So fast forward a few months later, August. Already was a huge fan of your work, and I had decided that I wanted to get your knowledge in front of the community. So August 2020, and I had the idea, let's start these interview sessions with people. I want Dr. Lyon to be in front of our community. So the secret is that's how our interview started. A year and a half ago, when I decided I want Dr. Lyon on the group to share the knowledge of the benefits of muscles. And since then, we grew from 300 women to almost 2,000
That's
amazing women.
incredible. That's
And
incredible.
we also interviewed more than 50 people, 50 women athletes, and some of them in your circle. Actually, we interviewed Dr. Seaman, Cara, um, Roxy Safé, Melissa Paris, amazing women
Yeah.
that helped so much to contribute. So you work so hard and you do so much, and I don't know if people you realize the impact that you have.
Aw,
And for us in Women Who Live Israel, you really helped me create, the badass community that we are
I love
today. So
it.
thank you.
Thanks so Amazing. I really appreciate that.
So, okay, so let's dig into our conversation. So, Dr. Lyon, tell us about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do, and anything else you'd like us to know about you and your practice.
Yeah. So obviously, my name, as you can see below here, is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and I am founder of the Institute for Muscle Centric Medicine and also CEO of Young Medical PC, which is my private concierge clinic.
Mhm,
All that to say, what's most important about this is this area of medicine that I specialize in, which is called muscle centric medicine. It's the concept that muscle, as you all know, is the largest endocrine organ in the body. It's truly the organ of longevity, which is so misrepresented. And really, everything in our society is focused on obesity, right? Lose weight, deal with the extra body fat, as opposed to a very empowering message, which is all about muscle.
mhm,
Which,
mhm,
Sarah, I think you guys do a great job at really focusing on skeletal muscle because that is, in essence, the cornerstone. So I founded the Institute for Muscle Centric Medicine, which is largely a think tank. So all the information that you are hearing is a culmination of research from my
Mm,
mentor, personal experience, personal research, also clinical research, now coming out to the public. And really, I'm on a mission to change the paradigm of medicine and change the paradigm of thinking about obesity.
amazing. And so, what was younger Gabrielle like? At what point did you become so passionate about the benefit of muscles, and why? Why did you choose this focus in your career?
Um, so I have always been interested in nutrition. That interest started when I was 17. So I moved in with my godmother, whose name is Liz Lipsky, and I worked for Room and Board, and I was exposed to nutrition. And I also started training at that time. Younger Gabrielle was easily just as tenacious as older Gabrielle. Very ambitious, very tenacious, but not self-ambition. It was really ambition to make an impact on others, to actually help better their lives. And that was something that's always been a core value of mine. Always interested in nutrition, was able to get mentors that significantly impacted my life. Dr. Donald Layman, who is a world-class protein expert, really very well published, incredible human. He has mentored me for over the last 20 years.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I've seen your YouTube videos. They're amazing.
Yeah. And if it's really about, one second. Sorry, my baby is crying.
No worries.
See, this
We
is
know how it is. A community of women.
So yeah, schools are closed and the nanny is gone. So you asked me in terms of, how this got started, the impact. My mentor, Dr. Donald Layman, who is still my mentor 20 some years later, is an expert in protein metabolism and one of the original kind of godfathers of protein metabolism and the interface of muscle research. And that's who's trained me.
Amazing. And you also talked about a fellowship that you did in geriatrics and how this impacted the way you wanted to.
Yeah, that's actually where everything started. So it's interesting. And I think the further along you get in your career, and this goes for any career, is you see pieces, right? You see pieces of information, you have experiential information of going through it, seeing different people, different parts of the puzzle kind of are all around you. And then what happens is a decade into practice, all of a sudden things start to become very synergistic. And I was at WashU, which in the US is a very competitive fellowship. It's a very good school. It's just a phenomenal school. And I had already completed my residency in family medicine and was doing what's called a postdoc, which is now 2 years of additional training in nutritional sciences and geriatrics. What happened was I became, part of that was clinic, right? So I was clinically caring for the elderly, doing memory clinics. And then another part of what I was doing was all about obesity. And it was about running a weight management clinic. It was doing metabolic research. It was doing other aspects of the interface of science and nutrition. And one of the patients, I was imaging their brain. And we were looking at the interface between obesity and cognition in terms of early onset Alzheimer's, earlier onset Alzheimer's, what that looked like. And I imaged this woman's brain who I'd spent a substantial amount of time with. And I saw that her brain had flattened. It looked almost like an Alzheimer's brain. And it was devastating. It was devastating to see this misinformation, this constant chase of obesity and Jane Fonda cardio. Not that there's anything against Jane Fonda, but her whole life had been chasing this kind of nebulous fat loss situation.
Right. Yeah.
And ultimately it destroyed her. And looking at her brain, I knew in a decade, it was 10 years down the line, it was going to be a problem. She was going to struggle to remember her kids' names.
And how old was she at the time?
Late 40s, early 50s.
Wow.
And that's just devastating. It's devastating because it was a light bulb moment where I realized we're doing it all wrong. And yet the narrative continues to be different.
Definitely. So you speak about the idea that muscle is the organ of longevity. I love this sentence. Can you elaborate about the medical benefits of having muscle on a woman's body?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's
Well,
the
I
organ
love
of
this is
longevity?
about women. I love that this is about women because traditionally muscle is all about men, right? We think about muscle, then we think about men. But the reality is muscle is as important in women, arguably more important. I focus on it because it's more difficult for us to put on muscle mass.
Mhm.
Muscle, when you think about it, is your site for glucose oxidation, right? In order for your body to utilize the nutrients like carbohydrates, the more muscle you have, the better your capacity to utilize nutrients.
Mhm.
So muscle is really this metabolic sink, number one. So if you care about body composition and you care about how your metabolism is working, and metabolism is this nebulous term, and really it's all about these chemical processes. But for argument's sake, when I think about metabolism, and from a practical aspect, think about being able to increase muscle mass and decrease body fat. So it's really
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
body composition aspect. Muscle, people talk about muscle being important for your resting metabolic rate. It's actually not that important in resting metabolic rate, which is the
Oh, interesting.
yeah, which is a myth, which is the calories that you burn at rest. Where muscle is really important is muscle is extremely important through exercise. When you're actually moving, when you're actually doing forms of resistance exercise or cardiovascular activity, this is where muscle really moves the needle for people. But at rest, resting metabolic rate, it makes up maybe 20 some percent. Organs make up
Mm.
another, majority of the metabolism. So if an individual were to put on 10 pounds of muscle, you're looking at 60 calories, 60 kcal change,
Mm.
60 calorie change, which is not that much.
Right.
But that's not where the magic of muscle is. The magic of muscle is really in the movement. The magic of muscle is really in maintaining glucose homeostasis, which is really the balance of blood sugar. It is really important for immune crosstalk. Exercising healthy muscle secretes myokines, which is still also more of a nebulous term, but we're starting to understand more of this interface between skeletal muscle and the immune system as it
Wow.
relates to injury. So if women are on bed rest from pregnancy, or if women, let's say someone injured themselves and I don't know, what would you do? You maybe have ACL surgery or even got, a respiratory illness. Your muscle mass is your reservoir. And that's why it's so important. And the reality is it's hard for women to build and maintain muscle mass. We don't have as much testosterone.
Mm.
Strength is definitely lower. I mean, you put a woman, and I understand that this might be somewhat inflammatory, but it's not meant to be. You put a man and a woman side by side at the same size, the man is probably going to be stronger. And it has
Right.
nothing to do, it's not, um, there are some gender differences, right? There
Mhm.
are some upper body gender differences. It's not,
Definitely.
it just happens. So focusing on skeletal muscle for women is really important. And then clearing up the narrative around that is also really important.
Great. So, what are some basic guidelines for growing and maintaining healthy muscle mass as we age?
Yeah.
And what roles do hormones have in muscle maintenance? And how does that affect muscle mass as we age?
Yeah. And I'm going to keep this conversation really geared towards women.
Yes, exactly. Please,
Okay.
please do so.
I would say we don't care about those guys now. So we know that testosterone is very anabolic. It's a very anabolic hormone. Optimizing for testosterone for women, whether it's hormone replacement, I'm not talking about super physiologic levels. I'm just talking about making sure testosterone levels are optimized is really important.
Mhm.
That being said, can you do that naturally? Really, the only way to do that naturally and would be obviously resistance train, not because resistance training in and of itself increases growth hormone in a substantial way. It does increase something called IGF-1. And also, then when you thus sleep, now you're talking about recovery. So there's a few things that are really important as it relates to testosterone and it relates to other hormones. When you think about estrogen, around menopause or perimenopause, a lot of women gain weight. Is there a
Mhm.
direct relation between menopause and weight gain? Not necessarily. Anecdotally, I would believe that there is, right? So you see women go through menopause and people are like, oh my God, I gained weight. I totally gained weight. It's got to be a decrease in estrogen. Well, the reality is there is this change in fat deposition. So you go from butt and hips to now central obesity. That being said, if you put a woman on estrogen, can you then increase? So the other thing that happens is when estrogen goes down, there's a decrease in activity. Women are less likely to move. These are some of the reasons that they believe menopause impacts obesity, and also increase in hunger cues. One way to deal with this is obviously hormone replacement. I don't know if Dr. Jamie spoke about that, but hormone replacement isn't a treatment for obesity. So that's interesting,
muscle,
right?
Building muscle is.
And then making sure that testosterone levels are high enough. And I actually have no problem recommending and treating lower levels of testosterone. I do think that it's very important.
Okay, got it.
For women, it's important.
We have a question from the community that just came in, and it's related to hormones. It might not be related to what you're saying, but I'm going through fertility treatments at the moment. Do you think that strength training can help stabilize hormones and help with the process?
So the reality is the healthier you are, the lower that your inflammation is, that can always help fertility. Also keep in mind your goal. Your hormones are going to be a mess right now, and that's totally okay. And that's part of pregnancy. And every woman will tell you that. The goal for you is to keep your sanity, to continue to train in an effort to keep perhaps body composition under control and secondary inflammation low, right? So chronic low-grade inflammation. Training does increase inflammation, but we're talking about low-grade chronic inflammation, which is important. So, and also don't worry about that stuff so much. Focus on getting knocked up.
Yeah, man.
All about priorities.
Okay, so let's be a little bit more specific about our protein requirements, as this topic is often a big and sensitive debate in our group.
Yes, so brutal.
How much protein should a woman eat, and does the recommendation change as we age?
Yes, Sarah, I know you know this.
I know this. I want them to hear it from you.
Let's talk a little bit about protein, and protein being the proverbial black sheep of the macronutrient family, shall we? If you listen to media right now, it's insane. Everybody's going plant-based. They are saying if you care about longevity, then you're going to reduce your protein intake. All of this stuff is nonsense, and that's the reality of it. There is, at the very core of this argument, is this anti-animal narrative, and there is nothing wrong with individuals who don't want to eat meat. Okay, I fully support that. I understand if it is an ethical decision. This is not an ethical conversation, right? So we have to separate what is emotion and what is meaningful to a person versus what is perhaps best for an aging individual, right? So they're two totally separate conversations. So let's take the ethical aspect out. If someone is ethical vegan, then I can appreciate that. Let us discuss protein and what protein needs are. Now, in the US, there's something called the RDA, and that's the recommended dietary allowance. And that's what we set to protect against deficiencies. That is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. The average woman eats about 70 grams of protein a day. That's like a meal and a half. Okay. And you have to understand, so these recommendations were really just disease prevention.
Okay.
Not prevention, just, so that this is the bare minimum that you need to eat. Okay. That was based on nitrogen balance studies of 18-year-old boys. Okay. So it's an outdated strategy to determine what was important. These are just outdated strategies. Okay. So now we know that the RDA, which has been determined to be the minimum amount to protect against, deficiency, not even disease, deficiency. So we take that off the table. The reality is, as we age, if you're overweight, if you are coming up against an illness, you need roughly double that. The recommendations are anywhere from 1.2 to 1.6 to 1.
Interesting.
Okay. And this is what the data says. Again, there's also some emerging data that for periods of time, individuals that are more vegan and vegetarian their microbiome and gut extraction of amino acids can be more like a ruminant, which is very interesting. And it's a bit too early for me to determine what that means and how that translates. But I will always do my best to bring you unbiased information in terms of what my personal beliefs are, which I think that you all know, but also what else is coming out there in terms of what else is the science showing. So back to protect against deficiencies is 0.8 grams per kilogram. We know that if an individual ages, for example, like the PRODAGE study, that's 1.2 up to 1.6 grams per kilogram, and that's double the RDA. Now, also, you're probably thinking, well, where do these numbers come from? These numbers come from a few places. Number one, as we age, and I use the term aging loosely, right? In your 30s and 40s, you are now
Okay, so yeah, most of us.
Yeah, not all geriatric. That the muscle becomes more naturally insulin resistant. It's just a phenomenon that happens. The body muscle can be thought of as the largest nutrient sensing organ in the body, right? Just based on mass. And what happens is the skeletal muscle becomes less sensitive to dietary protein. What does this mean? This means that in order for your body to sense and recognize dietary protein, especially high quality, it's really based on these essential amino acids. And we can talk about that later, leucine being one of them. The body requires a more robust amount of protein. That would mean 30 to 50 grams per meal.
Wow.
Which is not grams as in size, but 30 to 50 grams of dietary protein per meal. And the reason is because you want to have a robust response within the skeletal muscle. Okay, so now we know. So that means if you guys are drinking protein shakes, you shouldn't sip them.
Oh, you should drink them.
Drink them all at once because you need a robust amount of really. So what the body is sensing is it's sensing based on those amino acids all at once.
All at once. And what is the time period that you need to kind of chug it, let's say, or eat your protein?
I think that's a great question. I would say as soon as you can. I would say less than 90 minutes.
Okay.
As close together as you can. 90 minutes would be the absolute max, and that's more of an arbitrary number, but realistically, it should be as short as possible, right? It should be 30 minutes or less.
90 minutes within your workout or 90 minutes of eating the meal?
General. I mean, you should, and you really shouldn't do that. And you really shouldn't do that. So my recommendation is if you're going to eat your meal, you should sit down and eat your meal. And if it takes you a half an hour to consume that meal, it takes you a half an hour to consume that meal.
Okay.
But that's really what you're looking to do. Because if you think about it, so for example, this is coffee. I'm not drinking a protein shake. I love this coffee. You guys probably can't get this, but it's amazing.
Everything you post, we can't get.
But this is protein shake and I'm sipping it over a period of time. I'm just getting a spot of amino acid, or I'm just getting, a little burst. But the way in which skeletal muscle works is that it doesn't even bother to propagate these sensing mechanisms because they're so energetically expensive if you are in a low amount of protein, right? Because muscle goes through this muscle protein synthesis, requires a lot of ATP, that requires a lot of energy to turn over. The muscle won't even try to do that. Your body won't even try to deal with that. So that's why eating at one time is really important. The next important question to think about is how much protein do you need? Need and optimize are two separate things. So let's just talk about how much protein an individual perhaps would be the most beneficial, and then we can work down from there. I dose protein on 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. That is high, but defendable. It is high, but defendable. The science says that is higher than it needs to be, but that's fine. because it's not harmful. And then the other question is, what are you going to replace it with? Are you going to replace it with carbohydrates, or are you going to replace it with dietary fat?
Right. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I am not anti-carbohydrates and I am not anti-fat. There's a lot of dogma out there that doesn't need to be out there, and it becomes very confusing for people. An individual will know if they are carbohydrate sensitive. If they are carbohydrate sensitive. So, for example, I do much better on a higher carbohydrate diet than I do on a high-fat diet.
Mm-hmm. But it depends on the individual.
It depends on the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably some component of this depends on muscle fibers, which that's still, you know, I mean, obviously fiber typing is not my specialty, even though I used to do biopsies, which was super brutal. But I think that there are some components of this, you know, we don't know everything in science. Science is evolving, but there, you know, whether an individual does better as a carbohydrate versus a fat, you know, I mean, the reality is skeletal muscle uses largely fatty acids anyway. Did you know that? Fatty acids is the primary fuel source for skeletal muscle. So all very interesting. So 1 gram per pound ideal body weight, and then breaking that down to 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal.
And how many meals per day depends on
what you
on your weight.
Going to get much benefit if you're going over 50 grams of protein per meal. Probably won't get too much benefit.
Okay. So actually, the 2 most common concerns that we have heard about protein intake in our group are hormone-injected animal protein and the potential effects of high dietary cholesterol intake. Can you shed some light on these fears?
Yeah. Now, first of all, give me all the injected cow that I can eat. All right. And I say this very cheekily in a way that I hope you guys get my humor. We're all ladies here.
Yeah.
Is that there's bad practices in every industry. There's bad practices in medicine, and there's good practices in medicine. The majority, I will say, number one, an unhealthy cow doesn't grow. Mm-hmm. Cows are herding animals. If you put them all out in the field, they're all crowding together. Mm-hmm. I say this because there's, you know, in order for a animal to grow and come to market, it should be treated well. Okay. And the majority of cattle are coming from small farms. They're not, you know, the majority of cattle are not, you know, conventionally in these feedlots. That's not the majority of cattle. You know, but that being said, any bad practice is suspect, right? So but I mean that we can't say because there are certain people doing bad practices, everything is bad. Right? That's very extreme. So that's also not realistic. And the other thing is animals are treated with hormones. Can you imagine what it would taste like to eat a bull? It would be gross. So what they do is they try to make it very homogeneous. So they will implant a whatever kind of pellet, like if it's a, you know, and I don't know the details in terms of, because I don't do this stuff, but they'll implant, if it's a male cow, maybe they'll implant some kind of estrogen thing or whatever to make it so it is, it doesn't taste very gamey, right? So they do this, you have one steak that it tastes like the other steak. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we are mistreating the cows. Right. The question is more of a selfish question. How does hormones impact us, basically? So before it comes to market, it can't have any detectable hormones.
Oh, really?
The USDA doesn't allow for any other detectable hormones for it to come to market. Okay,
that's a good answer for that.
It has to be a washout period. So then the next question is, you know, is it
high cholesterol? Yeah.
Well, let's stay to the animal-based stuff for a second.
Okay.
It's really challenging, right? Do we have enough animals to feed the planet? I don't know that answer. I think it's a really tough one, and I think that they're probably the best answer is some combination, and we just don't know the best answer yet. But we do know that a high carbohydrate diet in the face of low protein and excess calories is a real problem. But if an individual or if a community or if a culture needed to do a combination of protein from animals and protein from plants, could that be reasonable? Totally. We just don't have a good answer, right? And I think that we just have to keep that in mind. That being said, if I had a choice between eating conventionally raised non-organic beef and a Twinkie, I would eat conventionally raised beef, right?
Right.
In my mind. And I would encourage everybody else to do that, to try to understand that these problems are not black and white.
Right.
They're difficult to answer, and they're difficult solutions to have. Because listen, if we had had the solution, we would have come up with it already. So we can only do the best we can. Then the other part of the question was, what was the other part of your question?
High dietary cholesterol.
Okay, so there's two components to this. There's diet. So the body makes a certain amount of cholesterol. Whether you get it from your diet, the body is required to make its own cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol doesn't translate to blood level cholesterol. Okay, so if you're eating eggs, that being said, cholesterol is not the enemy. And in fact, they took the dietary guideline. They took that out of the dietary guidelines. There's one group of individuals that seem to have an issue with high levels of dietary fat, and that's a lean mass hyperresponder. And that's a very specific type of individual who does not have familial high cholesterol, but then goes to a higher fat diet and seems to have abnormal lipids.
Okay.
An individual would know if that's them by taking their blood, checking their blood, easy. And it seems to be those individuals that are on a low carb, high fat diet. But dietary cholesterol, we took out that recommendation. That recommendation's gone. If you're eating cholesterol from eggs, you don't take that out of your diet. That doesn't mean that your blood level cholesterol goes up. Again, the body makes and generates its own cholesterol.
Got it.
So if your doctor goes, don't eat red meat because it's bad for your cholesterol, that's actually not accurate. And that's just been, misproven. But it's old. These old narratives die really hard.
Right. Yeah, I knew that from your previous YouTube videos, but I wanted you to shed light on it for this community.
You wanted me to be excited. I'm excited.
Okay, so since we are a women-only group, strength training during fertility treatments and pregnancy is a very popular topic in our group. And the consensus that we have heard from medical professional and Dr. 𝐸𝐮, for example, in the past interviews, has been that pregnant women can continue to lift weights. It can be even beneficial for her to do so. However, it should definitely be a time where we listen to our bodies, lower intensity, and really not try to go to our personal records in terms of lifting and aim mostly for maintenance. Do you agree with that? And is there any other advice that you would add to that?
I trained throughout my whole pregnancy. I was not concerned about body composition. In fact, I just pulled out 2 papers as I'm writing my book. I just pulled out 2 papers, and really they think about gestational diabetes. And one of the things with gestational diabetes is they believe that it relates to muscle mass because being pregnant is an insulin resistant state, right? The baby has to grow. In terms of being able to regulate some of that muscle mass plays an important role. I had 2 pregnancies back to back. Remind me never to do that again.
Go, Dr. Lyon. We're proud of you.
Done. And I trained throughout my whole pregnancy. So I did kettlebells, and I, had to modify some of my movements, but otherwise I trained, I trained pretty heavy. I don't know if it wasn't like I was PRing and I wasn't squatting 200 plus pounds, but I was still squatting. I was doing a lot of kettlebell movements. I was doing, I limited my high intensity interval training and I limited excess cardio. But other than that, I trained through both pregnancies. And the truth is I also trained right away afterwards. I was, I did it in a very particular manner, right? And Dr. Jamie will tell you the same thing. If she talked to you about it, I know that she trained because obviously she's a girlfriend of mine. We talked about it. She trained right afterwards.
So, but we do have some women that are actual power lifters that are lifting some, 150 kilos and more,
Right.
and I'm wondering if for
Right.
them it's still safe.
The first thing that you have to do is you have to understand that who you are as a non-pregnant person is different than who you are as a pregnant person.
Mhm.
And the most difficult transition is that one. The most
Mhm.
difficult transition is not having the actual baby. The
Mhm.
biggest transition is who you are when you are not pregnant versus who you are when you are pregnant. And this is really, really important to understand. And it's so important that I think I'm going to even do a post on it. You inspired me, Sarah. Is that non-pregnant, you guys are animals. You are working and you are training and you are
Fearless.
fearless. Like, fierce fucking humans, right? On fire. And then all of a sudden you get knocked up. You're exhausted. You're
Mhm.
probably vomiting. You can't even tolerate the same foods that you could tolerate. All of a sudden you're is putting on weight and you're like, why is my butt jiggling like that? Why is it happening? Right? All of a sudden your face looks like you looked in high school, or all of a sudden you don't even recognize yourself, right?
Mhm.
That is all totally normal, and you cannot, and the focus can no longer be about that athletic performance. The focus can no longer be who you were
Mhm.
when you were not pregnant.
Mhm.
And that's actually the most difficult transition. So then you have to realize that you are then going into this space where, okay, so this is all about what I need to do the best I can. So you do have to still put challenges for yourself, right? Because the human spirit thrives off challenge. You have to have challenges, but the challenge isn't going to be, I'm just going to do whatever, 10 kettlebell swings. It's like, okay, so my effort is going to be this. I'm going to put enough effort in. I'm going to stay consistent and I'm going to execute, right? I'm not going to worry about what my body is looking like because it's going to change and evolve. And I think that that's really important to understand. Really, really important.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing advice. You're not the same when you're pregnant as you were
But it's
before.
not the same.
It's temporary. You'll come back to yourself after you
Yeah,
give birth.
totally. And who you are while you're pregnant is not who you are. So the non-pregnant version of Gabrielle versus the pregnant version of Gabrielle is totally different. But we yet
Definitely.
still compare ourselves to the non-pregnant version of ourselves.
Amazing. So to follow up with this, there is still a gray area that is actively debated in our group. So we get this question at least once a month. So whether a woman is trying to conceive naturally or through fertility treatment, there's this window of time where the fetus is considered fragile by the medical professionals. I think it's from the time the embryo is first in the uterus up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. And this is also the time women are often told not to exercise in order to prevent a miscarriage. And we're not sure if like the medical professionals are really like up to date with this.
Yeah.
And we wanted to, get your advice on
Yeah.
that.
Well, I would say, well, number one, I would say a reason that, and obviously I'm not a OBGYN, but I would say that the reason a fetus or an embryo miscarries is not necessarily from exercise. Obviously,
Mhm.
from extreme stress and really increasing your heart rate, that could be a problem. But
Mhm.
I always exercised. I didn't do crazy cardio. I gave myself a little bit of grace up into that, 12 weeks, but I always exercised and I always trained. Weightlifting shouldn't be a problem, right? You're not doing heavy extreme exercises. Number one, you don't feel like it. This is not
Right.
the time to push yourself, but exercise is totally fine.
Okay.
But
Uh,
it shouldn't be. You shouldn't. Here's the reality of it. You shouldn't do anything that would risk the pregnancy. So
right.
I don't want you guys to debate about it. I want you guys to move and train, but I don't want you to do anything where in your gut you're like, wow, should I really be running this marathon?
Right. Mhm.
I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense. It's not, again, if you're doing that, you're viewing it through your non-pregnant self,
Yeah.
right?
That's good advice too. Like accept that you'll be different is such a good advice, like
Yeah.
temporarily. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about you at the moment. And don't worry, kids are, like kids are home right now. It's whatever. You go through the ebbs and flows of that.
Okay, great. So what about supplements like magnesium, collagen, and omega-3? So in
For what?
Israel, our water is very low in magnesium, so a lot of our community members take magnesium
Great.
supplements. And yeah, are these supplements also safe to take during pregnancy?
Typically, yes, but for what my recommendation is for pregnancy is taking a prenatal, taking iron, taking ferritin, taking omega, and taking vitamin D. Magnesium is
Omega-3?
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
magnesium is fine, right? Where you can soak in Epsom salt bath. Like I don't actually know how much magnesium would get absorbed, or that might not be the best idea. But topical magnesium, those kinds of things. Magnesium is not a problem.
And when you like search on iHerb, I wanted to take my magnesium one
Yeah.
day, and I just like got discouraged because there's so many different types of magnesium, and how do I know which one is good for
Depends on what you're
weightlifting?
looking for. So if you're looking for
Right.
GI stuff, you would use, I like to use magnesium oxide in our clinic. We use magnesium glycinate for muscle. We use magnesium threonate for brain, or migraines, those kinds of things. Sometimes
Okay.
there's a mix.
Okay. Okay, so we know that having a muscle mass can help regulate hormones. So you touched about this in the beginning. Can it help replace hormone therapy when hormones are lost during menopause?
No. And you don't want it to. You don't want it to. And listen, muscle mass doesn't necessarily regulate hormones. That's not really its primary function. Skeletal muscle is really this metabolic currency. It's also this crosstalk for everything else that we don't even know all the things that it does. It's important for brain function. It's important for nutrient distribution. It's important for IGF-1 release. But it is not going, no matter how much you train, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, at least in clinical practice, I haven't seen it.
So do you recommend the hormone therapy to your?
I do.
Yeah.
Why suffer?
Right.
Why suffer?
Right. So muscle cannot replace that. It's very clear.
No. I mean, at least in my practice. But again, it's personal preference. No one is saying that you have to go on hormones if someone is more of a naturalistic type of person. But I also would say, again, what's the middle ground? If you don't want to go on hormone replacement, nobody's forcing you to. Do I think it's bad for people? I don't. Do I feel like it's bad for people with pre-existing conditions who've had some kind of cancer or some kind of issue? Yeah, then maybe you want to figure out what your risks are. But no, I think that hormone replacement is a good thing, and I think it's important.
Great. So I understand that building a healthy muscle mass can prevent from major diseases. You touched this in the beginning, like Alzheimer's or diabetes, or even protect us against COVID. So can you help us understand the reasoning behind it?
Yeah. When you think about muscle, think about it as your individual body armor. It is tissue that is so important in multiple domains. One of the reasons why it helps protect against disease, if these are diseases of metabolism, diseases of metabolism largely begin in skeletal muscle. Insulin resistance begins in skeletal muscle. Subsequent diabetes, obesity, weight gain, dyslipidemia, Alzheimer's related to metabolic dysfunction. It's not that you become overweight and the body fat is causing the problem. If you care about the root cause, then you have to address skeletal muscle first, because that's where the problem starts. And then you become obese, and then you have low levels of inflammation. It's all goes back to skeletal muscle first. That's the most impact. If you want to be empowered and you want to impact the trajectory of illness, then you have to address skeletal muscle.
Yeah, so I saw this in myself. Actually, I was pre-diabetes before I started weightlifting, and it just went away by itself. So yeah, it was very interesting to see that with a little bit of weightlifting, this magic occurred where my glucose numbers were a lot better, personally. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, so the topic of weight loss is so sensitive in our group, and this is because so sensitive.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because we have so many different types of women that came to strength training for different reasons. A big group of women came from the body positivity movement, where they are just fed up with the diet culture and have tried to lose weight their whole lives, and are, just discouraged, and they come to weightlifting as a way to empower themselves and feel strong again, and
Love
feel healthy again. And then we have other women that come to the group or come to weightlifting for actual body composition goals. We have, bodybuilders even in the group.
it.
And we also have absolute elite athletes, marathon runners. We have, like I said, power lifters, Olympic lifters, that they know that nutrition is here to really optimize their performance goals. So
Right.
we have a mix of people that are so different. And basically, my question is it arguable that if you maintain a healthy muscle mass, but you are still obese, you have excess adipose tissue, can you be healthy? Is it possible to be healthy?
I have thought a lot about this, and we have to figure out what our health endpoints are. There is such thing as metabolically healthy obese as a definition. However, what does that mean long term? What does that mean for brain function? What does that mean for all the other aspects?
Yeah.
Right. And in my
so that's what we're looking at in terms of long term, in terms of longevity. Is it possible?
I think that if an individual can optimize for body composition, then I think that that's the best, right? Because with excess white adipose tissue comes low-grade inflammation. And
low-grade inflammation brings, can you give us some examples?
So low-grade inflammation is what some people believe to be the cause of some diseases, right? Just disease in general. And that's a very broad term, but low-grade inflammation has negative impacts on immunity, autoimmunity. Low-grade inflammation has negative impacts on arterial health. Low-grade inflammation over a period of time can cause all kinds of metabolic derangement. Low-grade inflammation can cause, depending on what it is, gut permeability, right? Can an individual be obese or overweight and be healthy? By some markers, they can be. And then you have to be very sensitive in the way that, well, what if this is the ideal body weight for an individual? That might be true too.
Right. So how do we know what our ideal body weight?
We don't know. I'm working on that. But as of right now, we don't know. We know a body fat percentage index, but we don't know a muscle mass index. But I'm hoping to at least find something.
Definitely. We'll keep following you on that. It's such an important, debate in our group.
I'm putting together for my book, so it'll be great.
Okay, so in addition to muscle-centric medicine, you're also very passionate about mindset. You have your own book club, I just saw.
Yeah, you should join. Even if you just get the recordings, it's so good.
Okay, definitely. So let's say you are someone that knows all the facts about protein, that knows all the benefits of muscles, but at the end of the day, you fail to execute. What are tools or advice you have for people that are stuck at the execution phase?
There has to be consequence. There has to be some kind of painful consequence that means something. Because ultimately, if you do that, you really erode your self-confidence. If you make a promise to yourself and you don't keep it over a period of time, you're eroding your self-confidence.
Definitely,
that has to be addressed. And the question is what are you going to do to make it worth it? What, are you just being a brat about it? That's ridiculous. There needs to be an accountability and there needs to be a consequence. So if you can't get your shit together, then you need to be accountable.
Okay, and what is example in real life?
So anytime I was a jerk to my husband, right? I had a stack of dollar bills, and I would just have to throw them out the window. Just
what?
How many times do you think I was a jerk? How many times do you think I was a jerk? Twice. After that, it hurt so bad that I couldn't do it anymore.
That is good. That's a good advice.
Let's say you have to call your ex-boyfriend or ex-husband. If you can't keep your food promises, you have to call your ex and talk to them for 20 minutes, you would be like, I am not, or your mother-in-law. I mean, I happen to have great mother-in-laws, but, you know,
Yeah.
what if you have to do that? You're not going to do that. Or you have to take out the garbage, you know, you're like on garbage duty. That would suck. You would just be, it would be annoying. You wouldn't do it. So if someone isn't following through with what they say, then there has to be a consequence.
Got it. Okay, so this is amazing, Dr. Lyon. Thank you so much for all of this knowledge. I would love to give you the opportunity to talk directly to our members about anything that is important to you that we haven't already covered. Is there anything you'd like to share with our community before we get into the questions?
Yeah, I will say, I think it's really important that, number one, I'm really proud of you all for standing for something.
Thank you.
And Sarah, you're doing a great job at leading the charge. Being empowered is the best thing that you can ever be. Right? Being empowered, taking control of your health, not becoming victimized by it is the most valuable thing ever. Being strong and being physically strong is being mentally strong.
You're getting applause from the audience, and you are a queen from the audience. Okay, so I know you're short on time, so we're going to quickly go through some of the questions. We won't have time for all of them, but I'm currently pregnant, and as much as I try, I cannot stomach any animal protein help.
I couldn't either. Do you know that? I literally was high carbohydrate for nearly all of my
Wow, really?
Oh,
Wow.
I had hyperemesis gravis. Just do the best you can. You can try a shake. That can be beneficial. Shake, maybe a little bit of cheese or cottage cheese or yogurt if you can. But I actually couldn't eat any kind of animal protein either. And the reason they believe that that happens is that they believe, and I think that I've only read one article on this, is that the body's trying to protect itself from any kind of pathogens.
Interesting.
Just do what you can and it'll get better.
How do you find time to take care of yourself and with 2 small children?
Just do it. It's terrible. I mean, you just do it.
Just do
You
it.
have to have help. You have to have someone come, like after this, I'm going to go train. So I'll give you an example. This morning, so typically I get up before the kids get up. I leave before 7 o'clock. I'm gone. They're just waking up when I come back. I have to hire someone in that nighttime, like in that morning, early morning time to come and cover that. For example, this morning, I didn't have help. That didn't happen. Also, my trainer, who has never canceled is like, can we do this afternoon? As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah. No excuses. You first.
I mean, it's just tough, right? Like you have to do it. It doesn't get easier. And then if you don't do it, then you resent your kids. Like if I don't go and work out, I will resent everybody.
Definitely. My husband definitely knows when I didn't get a lift in. You can feel it. How can vitamin D deficiency affect muscle growth? Is the current cutoff point for vitamin D deficiency too high?
So vitamin D is not anabolic in nature, but there are vitamin D receptors on muscle. Does it necessarily impact muscle growth? Not with the data that I've seen. It does affect balance and it does affect some of the actual ability of the muscle, right? So we used to screen for that it can contribute to falls. Doesn't necessarily contribute to growth, but it can contribute to other aspects of skeletal muscle. That's a really important question. The deficiency, is it set too high? No, I think that an optimal range, I don't know kind of what metrics you guys use, but in my clinic, I like to see in the blood, I like to see between 60 and 80.
Okay.
What
are your thoughts about bone health in women with menopause? What could be done to prevent and treat osteoporosis using exercise and supplementation?
Exercise is really important. Protein intake is really important. Calcium and vitamin D are very important. Definitely making sure that you're supplementing with that is paramount. In terms of other things, there's other peptides like CJC and ipamorelin, things of that nature can help with bone. So natural supplementation is great because bones, as it relates to nutrition, the connection is pretty clear. And then other hormone replacement is also helpful. And then peptides.
So this is related, actually. Calcium plus vitamin D3 supplements. Who should be taking them, if at all? And is it true it doesn't help to prevent osteoporosis?
So osteoporosis, there is a genetic component, right? If you're drinking too much, if you're smoking, okay, so there's genetics, and then lifestyle. Are you drinking? Are you smoking too much? I do believe in supplementation, but I do believe in supplementation, and according to some of the literature, that is what is recommended.
Okay.
And it's multifactorial.
What about carbohydrates? How much do you recommend consuming a day?
You have to earn your carbohydrates.
I love this.
So carbohydrate intake, really should be thought about as a meal-to-meal basis. Your body can generate all the carbohydrates you need, but if you decide and choose to have carbohydrates, you shouldn't really be above 40 grams of carbs in any sedentary time, because now you end up creating a more robust insulin response. So 40 grams or less. But the reality is, if you're going to go above that, and that's per meal, if you're going to go above 90 grams of carbohydrates per day, the RDA is set at 130. You really should earn those carbohydrates. That's probably too high.
By exercise.
By exercise, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you consider high quality protein?
So quality protein is a hard, fast biological analysis. What do I mean by that? Quality protein, by definition, is based on amino acid profiles. Amino acid profiles are based on the essential amino acids, right? There's 21 amino acids and there are 9 essential amino acids. It's based on those 9 essential amino acids, meaning you cannot get them from your body. Up until now, we believe that. And it must be obtained through the diet. That is how you define a high quality protein. High quality protein, the proteins that have the highest amount of essential amino acids, are animal-based products, whether they're whey, whether they're red meat, they're gravity-bearing animals. If it runs, even if it flies, if it swims, it has a little lower protein content, but it's different than if it grows from the ground. High-quality protein is typically animal-based proteins that come from animal sources.
And you're looking for specific amino acids.
You're looking for all the amino acids for muscle growth and hypertrophy, and you need all of them. But the question about high quality protein is really based on the essential amino acids. And those essential amino acids, there's 9 essential, and then there's, of course, branch chain, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And those are what really are utilized for muscle stimulation. But in order to actually lay down muscle, you need all of them.
This is a hard one. I am vegan. How can I make sure to get adequate protein?
You have to supplement. Otherwise, the carbohydrate intake is just too high. So this is now the way I would supplement for you would be 5 grams of creatine and then essential amino acids with each of your meals. A scoop of essential amino acids, making sure that those branch chains are there.
Okay, last question. What does your daily nutrition look like?
So this morning, I typically fast in the morning. This morning I had some bacon and eggs. And I just had some berries and a thing of cottage cheese. I'm going to go train, and then I probably won't eat again. I'll have another big meal. We'll cook up some steaks tonight, maybe some spinach, maybe not. And that's it. I'm a light eater.
2 meals a day.
2 meals a day and a snack. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we got a comment. You ladies are awesome.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Okay, so to end the interview on a positive note, give us a few last words of inspiration from the heart. Maybe share what your motto is in life and why.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say you guys are doing great. Don't listen to any naysayers. Don't listen to what anyone else says. Front side focus is really what needs to happen. And be tough, be strong, be tough, be resilient.
Amazing. So, Dr. Lyon, thank you so much. Can you tell our listeners how they can find you if they
Yes,
want to read your book one day? What are you working on?
my book is not out yet, but it will be.
Yeah.
That'll be out in 2023, so it's in the works. If you guys are
Yay.
looking for me, I'm on Instagram. You can find me on my website with the same name, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. My email, you definitely should sign up and get my newsletter. I always put information.
Definitely love
Always
your
try to
newsletter.
put, yep, always try to put very well vetted information on there. And my YouTube. So I do a lot of education. If you guys have specific questions, then you can drop it on the comments and I will do my best to answer that.
Yeah, I listened to all of your YouTubes on my run. It helped me
Amazing.
through my half marathon. I ran a half marathon in January, and I
Awesome.
was listening to you and Roxy. So
Roxy's amazing. Roxy is amazing. She is one
amazing.
fit. Who else we have on is Emily Kyberg.
Yeah, okay.
She's amazing.
I'll write it down. Amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Dr. Lyon. Thank you for your time. I
Thanks,
really appreciate. Bye.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks
great
for
day.
having me. Bye.